Welcome! Join me today as we create some fun kitchen-themed DIYs. Whether you're looking for new ways to decorate, organize, or simply have fun, this is the place to be. Hi, my name is Katie from Lady Red Crafting. Let's get crafty in the kitchen. Here's a quick and easy DIY. I'm taking one of these fun planks from the Dollar Tree and I'm just going to put this on a paintable surface. And using my Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster, we're going to give this a nice coat of paint. And this doesn't need to be perfect, it's totally okay if the wood shows through. Now let's set that aside to dry. I found these letters at Walmart and it spells out the word eat. And I'm just going to tape these down onto a paintable surface so it's easier to paint them. Tape these down, I usually use painter's tape, but if you don't have that around, you can go ahead and use masking tape and that will work just fine. Let's grab our Waverly chalk paint in the color ink and I'm going to go ahead and paint the tops of these letters and around the edges as well. I'm using my heat tool to dry these because I really want to make sure these are really nice and dry before we go on to our next step. So I found this reusable self-adhesive stencil on Amazon and I really like the pattern on it. And I've used it in a few different crafts and I want to use it on this one as well. So I will put a link in my description box below so that if you wanted to look into the stencil, you could. Now I don't want to use the stencil on the full letter itself. I'm only going to use it on pieces of the letter. Now using my chalk paste by Redesign in the color Vintage Lace, we're going to take our squeegee and just squeegee that paint over the top of the stencil. Now let's just repeat this step until we have a nice design on each one of these letters. And I love how bold this is turning out. I just think this black and white is just a fun look together. And once we have the white paint completely dry, I did go back with my Waverly chalk paint in the color ink and just did a little bit of touch-ups in any spots that I thought needed a little bit of extra black. So while this is drying, let's go ahead and make a bow. And I'm going to do triple loops on either side of this bow just to make sure it's nice and full. And I'm just doing a single loop and then grabbing it in the center and doing the same on the opposite side. And once we have all of our loops, I'm going to scrunch it in the center and using a piece of pipe cleaner, I'm just going to wrap that around the center and fluff my bow. And next I'm just going to grab my scissors and dovetail the tails on this bow. Once that is complete, I'm going to cut another piece of ribbon here and I'm just going to fold it into thirds and hot glue that around the pipe cleaner just to cover it up. It's about 2 inches in ribbon. And this simple triple loop bow is adorable. I hope that this is something that you can master because I think this bow goes well with a lot of different crafts. Let's go back to our letters. For our final step, we're going to use some Jolene finishing wax. And using a lint-free cloth, we'll just rub that wax over the top of the paint. And now for the fun part, let's put this all together. We're going to put the board out that we painted at the beginning and add the letters on top. And I'm using my straight edge to make sure that everything is in place where I would like them. And then what you'll see me do here is I'm going to take my straight edge and I'm going to place it down kind of like a line. So that way I can just take the letters and put my wood glue on the back with a little bit of hot glue and then place them back exactly where I wanted them on the board. Then we would just repeat this step for the other 2 letters until everything is glued into place. Now I did not move this sign for probably 2 hours because I wanted to make sure that wood glue really stuck onto the sign before I did my next step. Now for our last step, we're going to reattach the original hanger that came on this sign. And once we get that reattached, I'm going to take some hot glue and hot glue that triple bow onto the top. And here is what our sign turns out to look like. I just love the details in the stencil on this, and I think this is just a unique, farmhouse piece that you could put in your kitchen or dining room? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. So I've been wanting to make this piece for some time now, and this is a no-sew kitchen towel. So for this project, you'll need a flour sack towel, a fabric square, heat bond, and some lace trim. And your main tool that you'll be using for this is your scissors and your ironing board. And I'm just using my heat press here, but you can use an iron as well. And I'm just going to iron my fabric square. And I'm just going to trim a little bit off of my fabric square to just make it a little bit more even, since this fabric square has a pattern on it. And I really want to get the home section for the bottom piece of my towel here. So I'm trimming about a 4.5-inch piece off of the fabric square, and we can save the rest of the fabric for later. And I want a nice edge on the top of my piece of fabric here. So I'm just going to fold a small piece down and iron that flat. Before we get any further, I'm just going to trim the edge where there's a little bit of a fraying going on. And sometimes this will happen with your fabric squares, and you can just trim those off. Go ahead and grab this flour sack towel. And I like these towels because you can do so many different things with them. Let's go ahead and lay down our piece of fabric that we cut on the bottom piece of this towel. And I'm trying to center that on the towel the best that I can because we will have a little bit of an edge there. Next, I'm grabbing my heat bond, and this stuff is amazing. This works so great if you don't want to sew and grab that sewing machine out. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut some strips that are about the length of the piece of fabric that we have. Next, we're going to fold down our piece of fabric, and we're going to set the heat bond right on top of the flour sack. And once we have everything lined up, I'm going to take my heat press and I'm just going to iron that on to our fabric. And this is the key here. You still have the piece of paper on the top of the sticky stuff for the heat bond, and you iron that on really well to the fabric that you're going to adhere the second piece to. And once you've done that, you're going to just go ahead and you're going to take that piece of paper right off of the top of our heat bond. And then we'll lay the fabrics down on top of that sticky side and re-iron it again. So it's a 2-step process. And then we're going to repeat this step for the bottom side. And while we're doing that, I want to take a quick moment to talk to you about the playlist I'm a part of this month. This is the Talented Creators collaboration, and the theme is Spring and Kitchen Decor. Hosted by Aria with DIY with Aria, Lisa at Our Gray House, and Loli from Loli D Creations. This playlist and these wonderful hosts are all linked in my description box below, so please check them out and give them some love. Thank you! Now, I want to get a little bit more of a nice edge on this fabric. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that same heat bond and we're going to go ahead and we're going to make a U shape over the top of the edges of the bottom piece. So all along the bottom and then up along both sides. So I'm starting out by just ironing on my U shape over the top of this fabric. And we're just leaving that piece of paper on there because we're going to take that off here in a little bit. So for the trim, I'm using lace crochet, which I got at the Dollar Tree, but I've seen this at the fabric store and other craft stores as well. And this is not wired. So we're just going to measure out 3 pieces, one for each side of the fabric and one for the bottom piece of the fabric. And I'm starting with the sides, and that is where I am going to iron them on first, because that bottom piece then will go over the top of the corners on the bottom there. So now we're going to take the paper off the bottom and we'll add our piece of trim and just iron that down as well. Now, once I ironed down the bottom piece of trim, I did have to lift the corners up and add a second set of heat bond just to make sure everything stayed on top of each other. And once I was satisfied with everything being ironed down, that was all I had to do for this adorable little kitchen towel. So I'm just going to fold this out really nice so you guys can see what it would look like hanging on your stove. And I love how this turns out. This is just something that's so versatile that you could do with any sort of decor for your kitchen. Here is another quick and easy kitchen craft that you can do. Find some tissue paper that you love, this wall cling from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to be using this wall wood hanger that I found at the Dollar Tree in the Crafter Square section. I'm going to start out by just removing the hanger from this wood palette. Using my Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster, we're going to give a nice quick coat of paint over the top of this palette. And once our paint is completely dry, we'll grab some Mod Podge, and I'm using matte Mod Podge for this, and we're just going to paint a little bit of that over the top of the whole entire palette. Once that Mod Podge is completely dry, I'm taking my piece of tissue paper and I'm just going to lay that out on top of our palette. And for our next layer, I'm placing a piece of parchment paper over the top of the tissue paper. And using my heat press, I'm just going to iron our tissue paper onto that Mod Podge, and that Mod Podge will warm up and allow that tissue paper to adhere to the board. Now I'm going to grab my zip sander or a sanding block if you have one of those, and I'm just going to sand in a downward motion to remove any excess tissue paper from the board. I didn't get this next step on camera, but I did cut the wall cling into little pieces so that way it would be easier for me to position them onto the board. Now that we have our wall stickers all in position on the board, I'm going to remove them from the piece of paper and then add them to the board very carefully. And now that everything is in position, I grab my hard surface Mod Podge and a foam brush, and I put this on a paintable surface, and we're just going to go ahead and paint this with the Mod Podge to seal everything in. And I'm using the foam brush to allow for no brush strokes to show through. And once our Mod Podge is completely dry, I take a skewer and I'm just going to go ahead and poke the holes back out that were at the top of our sign so we have a way to hang this again. I wanted to give this a little bit more of an elegant hanger, so I'm using a satin ribbon for the hanger on this. And we could stop here, but I wanted to go a little bit further, and I'm going to add a quick bow to the top of this sign. So I'm just going to hot glue that right to the center at the top. And if you'd like to learn how to make this bow, I have a quick tutorial that's right in the corner here that you can go ahead and click and check that out. And here is what our little sign looks like. I think this is so cute, and it's also useful to have in the kitchen. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. This is a great little craft if you want to do a quick gift for a friend or if you're just learning how to craft. We're going to start out with this cute magnet from the Dollar Tree. I place it on a paintable surface, and using my Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster, we're going to give a nice coat of paint over the top of this magnet. And to cover this completely, I did need to do 2 coats of paint. For our next step, we're going to use this beautiful tissue paper that I got at the Dollar Tree and some hard surface Mod Podge. We're going to take a paintbrush and just paint that Mod Podge over the top of the magnet. And while the Mod Podge is still wet, I'm going to lay a piece of tissue paper over the top of the Mod Podge. And for our next layer, we'll use a piece of cling wrap over the top. And I'm using a little Mod Podge roller here to just roll out all of the wrinkles, but you can also smooth this with your hands as well. Quick thank you to all those viewers out there. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button below. And once everything is dry, I go ahead and grab my Mod Podge again and would do a nice coat of Mod Podge over the top of the tissue paper. And once that is dry, I take my zip sander or sanding block would work great, and we just sand off the edges of this tissue paper. Now Now I'm going to take a wood skewer and I'm just going to poke the hole back through on the top of the magnet. Now let's add some embellishments. And using my hot glue, I'm going to add this quick bow to the top of my cutting board. Now I found these adorable buttons at Ben Franklin the other day. And I'm going to use the little spoon set, and we're going to just take the little piece off the back side of the button, and I'm just hot gluing that as an embellishment on our little magnet. I did find a package of very similar buttons on Amazon, so I'll put a link in my description box below in case you don't have a Ben Franklin by you. Now here's the finished magnet. This turns out so cute. It's a great little addition for your kitchen, or it'd be a nice gift for a friend. Thank you for taking the time to watch today. I really appreciate each and every one of you, and if you'd like to see more crafts, click on this next video. And as always, please remember, craft more, stress less.